Hello everybody and welcome to Cairn Hill Art Cabin in County Cavan in Ireland. My name is Margaret McKenna and apologies for being a bit late. We were waiting for an announcement regarding the lockdown here in Ireland, and so things have been taken to another level now, and so it's a bit more serious, which we kind of expected. So, and then on top of that, then I went back to the internet and it was acting up a little bit. So I'm hoping you can all see me now. If anyone is online, maybe you can let me know. I think the internet is just being a little bit acting up a little bit at the moment, but hopefully it'll balance out in a few minutes. So anyway, during this time, which is rather a strange time to say the least, it's not something we're used to having to be in our homes and getting very, very sort of stuck in small places and confined. Hello, Grania, how are you? So I'm hoping that at least doing a few art classes is a good way to try and keep your mind off some other more serious matters. And as I say, apologies if the internet is a little bit dodgy. I don't know why. Sometimes it comes and goes a bit. So even though it's good in the house, but out here in the cabin can be a bit bad. So, okay, so today, without much more ado, what I'm going to do is we're going to do a still life painting done in acrylics. And it's a good while since I've done a still life painting, so it'll be a bit of a challenge for me to do it on air, as it were, live. So it'll be interesting to see how many mistakes I make and have to correct them along the way, which is good because the way I look at art is it should be something we can relax at, and if we make mistakes, we change them. We have to work along with what we do, and there's always little tips and hints and that I'll give along the way, which will make it a lot easier for you. So okay, I'll show you now what I've done. I have a little setup here, which is some daffodils and some fruit. And I'm going to turn the camera to you so that you can actually see it, I'll turn it back, and I'll turn it back every now and again so you can get a view of what I'm seeing. So I'm just going to turn the little table here, first of all, and you can see it here. So basically, what I've done is, as you can see it, I've just put a background here. Hello, Karen, how are you? I hope Faith is giving this a go. She might enjoy it. Okay, so we have the basic is two daffodils out of the garden. These are the old style daffodils with the multi kind of inside petals, and not the more designer ones that you get in the shop, as it were. We have an apple, which I might just turn a little bit out this way, just to give it a little bit of a turn out here, like that. And then we have the banana and a lemon behind. Now I've put a rough black background behind, but it won't be quite black what I'll be using, but it's just to give it a dark background for contrast, which I'll talk to you about soon. So the first thing what I want you to look at when I start a picture, and the reason I'm focusing on this at the moment is I want you to have a look at this. I'm just going to move this a little bit just there so I can get a better angle on it. Okay, so what I was hoping is that you'll be able to learn a little bit about composition in this, and where to put how to position your composition on the page. So first of all, one thing I always would say is, rather than actually starting with one item on the page, so in other words, instead of just starting with an apple and we'll draw an apple, the problem with that is when you put that on the page, we could do a lovely drawing of an apple, but sometimes we could end up it's either too big or too small in relation to the actual page you're doing it on, or you could end up putting a beautiful apple, perfect size, and it's over to one side, so that when we actually try to draw the whole thing together, or the rest of our composition and all the other items are heading off in one direction or another. So I look at the overall shape first, and when I say the overall shape, I mean the shape that within which this whole area is contained. So if we look at this, for example, you can imagine there's a line along here at the bottom. So look at the line like that, and we come up here, we've got another line like that up the side of the vase, and then we come down here like that. So it's almost a triangle shape this makes, if you look at that. Okay, it's almost a triangle. Maybe my banana there, sorry, keep knocking it. So if you get a triangle shape here, and that's the overall shape of the composition. And if we get that overall shape, I'm going to turn this around back now to so I can see it, and I'll turn back here to where I am here now so you can talk. I'll show you. Now remember, if you have any questions as we go along, please put them in the comment line here, and I'll try and answer them as we go along. I just dropped something in. So the idea first is to try and get the composition on the page. So now we realize we want to do it in a triangular format, more or less, and then we'll jiggle that around afterwards. Now I'm going to use a black kind of a pencil crayon to draw in. Often I would actually use the paint directly, because how I look at it is that we can work it in terms of it's never fixed. We always change things around a little bit as we go along. So to start with, I'm going to start with the line at the bottom of my triangle. So I'm going to work it. So where do I want this to go? I want this overall composition to fit into this sort of space. So I'm going to work a line roughly about there. So this is roughly the triangle shape I want to work my composition in. Okay, so within that space is where our composition will be, and we now know that it will fit nicely in the page. But we'll have a little bit coming out as well, so it won't be just strictly in the triangle. Now we're going to put, if we look at the bottom of this is the very bottom. So actually our table line comes probably about behind it like that, because this is where our banana will end. Now we can start putting in our actual items into the picture. So to start with, I'm going to work on the vase. So, or it's actually a little glass here I have. Now, one thing to remember when we're doing anything like a glass or any kind of a vase or cup, even if we're drawing a cup, is to watch the shape at the top of the rim of the cup. And I'm going to just use another page here, for example, just to show you what I'm talking about. If we're drawing a cup, for example, so we start with, often a mistake that's often made, for example, is we put, say, a flat bottom, for example, and we'll come up the side. I'm just doing a standard, and we then put our circle like this. And what that does is it's twisted the cup coming towards you. So we've got a flat here, and it's round. So we're looking into this bit, but we're looking at an eye line down on this part, because that is straight at their eye level, and that makes it look rather sort of obscured, really. Or what is the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word now. Instead, however, if we do it like this, all of a sudden now we have a cylinder. We have the cup shape. So this is very important. And if I brought this up higher, for example, so we have the bottom line here, and we bring it up higher, we will find that the ellipse, as we call this part here, will get much narrower as we come near our eye line, until it will actually be flat. And as we go up further, we will actually go the opposite direction, because this now is the outside and that one is on the far side. So you can see how you can actually get the perspective of the ellipse of like a tube. So really that's what you're talking about when you're going to be doing this as well. So it's just a little quick lesson on how to make sure you get the perspective right. So how do I draw this vase? So I'm going to bring down my line, a middle line. So there's my edge line. That's where I'm going to have my edge line. Okay. So I'm going to come in a little bit here, and I'm just going to draw a line down here. Now this is going to be the middle of the vase, and I'm going to make this the top of it, and I'm going to make this, doesn't quite say about here, is the bottom of it. Okay. So I'm going to make my ellipse here. Now I'm looking quite far down into, I'll just switch it back over here if you can see so I'm looking down, quite down on this rim here. So I'm going to, now I've turned the table slightly, I'm looking at a slightly different angle now than you are at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that I'm going to draw fairly dark now so that you can actually see this, because I'm looking into it. By putting the middle line down there, it means that I can see if this is fairly even on each side. So I don't end up with a kind of a wobbly ellipse that's kind of coming very narrow here and wide here. And I'm going to come all the way down. I'm going to make it into a triangle then, like a cone really, because it comes like that shape there. Okay. So I bring it down like that. And that there now is the basics for the front part of the glass. We can vary, this is just the basic shape, and we then can actually adjust it after. Now this has a kind of a square bottom, but I think we'll give it a round bottom because it'll illustrate a little better what I'm talking about. So we're going to come down to, there's the bottom of our glass. So I'm going to come and put a little dot about here, and I'm going to just make an oval here like this. And again, I have that center line so that I can see roughly that this is even with that. Now you can see, that was a bit too big, so I'll make this narrower. And I'll make it a bit more like that. And then I can widen this I can put 2 lines like that at the bottom. And again, I have another little ellipse in here. And that's the basic now drawing for our glass. Okay. Now, I'm just going to very roughly just see where I'm going to put my flowers. At the moment, I'm not going to put any detail. I'm just going to literally just map it in. So I'm going to put one about here. So I'm just literally just putting a kind of a roundy, sort of rough, roundy shape. And I'm going to put another one. It's going to come up here like that. And I'm going to bring it out. And I'm going to let this one come outside my triangle, you see. So this is where I now know I have my basic shape in here with all my items. And then I have my rough shape like that. Okay. So at the bottom now, we're going to do our apple. So the apple is going to come up nice and fairly round. So it overlaps with this a good bit. So it doesn't matter if this comes through it for now because we're painting over it anyway. So again, I'm going to make this fairly high. This is going to come roughly to the bottom. And there's a little, this is where we're going to have our little stem. And we have in the background, we have, hello Sandra, how are you? We're going to have a little bit of our lemon here. And our lemon is going to come like a lemon. We can actually draw through it even. If you actually draw through the item, as you can see here, if you draw through it, it gives you an idea as to where it's sitting on the table. Because remember, just because I can see only a little bit of the lemon doesn't mean that the rest of the lemon isn't going behind the object. So sometimes if you draw the whole thing, you can actually see better where it's actually sitting. And then we can rub that out afterwards or paint over it, as the case may be. Now, we can now have our banana, which we're going to bring. So I'm just going to bring just an arc like that. And it turns around. And it's quite a long, quite a hook shape here because this is where it's bent around to the front of it here. And again, it comes down behind the apple a little bit. And just much straighter on this side. And there's another line in the middle which comes in here like that. And we just have a little edgy bit there like that. I have a little petal there which we can put in as well. So that's really our basic drawing done now for it. And that's how I would start it anyhow. Now, how do I start after that? Now we're on to painting. So when we go to paint, I think I've said this before, what we do is I start with the background. I always think of this as like a stage. So again, I'm just going to turn you back to here for a minute. If you think in terms of this being like a stage here, and this here is our backdrop here, and these are all our props, our stage scenery coming in on top of it. So I would start with the background, and then I'll gradually work these through the foreground. Another thing I would say is don't get caught up on one area at a time. So really try and do the whole and work from the whole to the detail. I usually try and get all the color in on the page first, or on the canvas, whatever we're doing it on. The reason being, if we try and work one piece in detail, sort of like get this perfect, say, banana, often when we actually then try and add in the other sections of the painting, it can look quite out of place. Our contrast might be right, the color mightn't be strong enough, and we can get very caught up in doing one particular piece. Much better, I personally find, to do an overall color on it, and that's what I'm going to do first. So today I'm actually going to use acrylics, and as I explained before, acrylics come in all different shapes and sizes. For example, there's this tube type, and we have the cheaper type of tube versions, which are these ones here, which are not as strong a pigment, but I still use them often. And we can go for the tubs as well here, the larger tubs, great for the white ones and that, because still a quite good quality, this one here, and there's a good lot of white in it. So that's quite a good one too. So I'm going to start by doing a background color. So for the background, I'm going to keep it fairly dark. It says black here, so I'm not going to use black. I'm going to use a bit of a blue and a brown. So we're going to use, now remember, you can always come back and look at this afterwards. It'll be on my page, and you can come back in and you can look at it after, if you don't get to look at it now. So I'm going to mix a bit of ultramarine blue, and I'm going to use some burnt umber. So for the two of these, I'm going to go to a nice dark background, and I actually will put out some white as well. Titanium white is the best white to use, actually. It's the strongest white you have, really, rather than the mixing white or zinc white, or I would find titanium. If you're going to excuse me the sound of that. It's the white paint coming out of the tube here. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to get a fairly decent sized brush, and I'm just going to mix initially the brown and the blue together. Okay, so you get a very dark color with the brown and blue. Hi, Audrey. So you get a very dark color with the brown and blue, and I'm going to add a teeny bit of white into that. You can add different shades. So I'm going to start by making a very dark background, a little bit of white into it, and I'm just very roughly going around the flowers. I'm actually, in fact, I come in a little bit on them. The reason is because what I want to be able to do is be able to go out over the background afterwards. And I don't bother about the stems, so there's no panic in painting over stems, because that can be a bit of a pain in the neck, to say the least. So I'm going to make this fairly dark. I'm going to come down the side here like that. And actually, I'm going to just flick a little bit more white through it. And I'm just going to come in and I'm actually initially, I'm going to use a bit more white, and I'm just going to color in this. This is open to change this bit. This is not set in stone by any means, this bit. Now I'm going to make, so we're going to, now, see, so we're all going to be stuck in now for a while. It's going to be strange, strange world. If anybody had said to us at Christmas time that this was going to be, we just couldn't have believed it. I mean, it's like being in a zombie apocalypse movie without the zombies. You can't even see the thing. That's the annoying part. You just have to get on with it, I guess. That's not easy. Not easy at all. And people who are on the front line, it's the more we help them by just staying inside, I suppose the best, really. Now, okay, here we go. So I'm just going to continue doing this, and I'm just doing a kind of motion, like, you know, not particularly any. And sometimes I put in a bit of blue directly. I don't really mix it up to a paste on this. I put blue, then I can put brown. Great thing is you can also mix literally on the canvas itself. So I'm going to just go down like that, cross like that. So now we're getting rid of our triangle that we could see earlier on. In on this flower, not the whole way in, just a little bit so I know where it is, but means that I've got room to maneuver with my. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail at the moment. I want to try and get, as I said, an overall colour on it, and then we can come back and play around with the individual items. And my plan for this class, or this demonstration really, is to just get as much done in about, what time did I start? I started around 20 past. An hour and a half. So obviously I'm sure a lot of you will have other things to do in the hour and a half, but I'll keep going. You can dip in and out, go and make a cup of tea, whatever you have to do. You know what I've been doing? I've been sorting out drawers around the house with piles of rubbish in them. God almighty, you never know how many bills and things that have to be sorted out. I never get time to do it. So I had a filing cabinet, an old filing cabinet that was given to me by one of my art students, and thank you so much for it, because it's in brilliant condition and it's amazing. I mean, that's what I've been doing, sorting out loads of old bills and God knows what that I haven't had a chance to do for a long time. So there's always other things to be done. Now, okay, so here we go. So that's my rough kind of background, and I will lighten it and shade it in between, okay? So that's just a very rough idea. Now I'm going to put a rough bottom bit first. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of a different brown in this. Oh, just make like my roll of, sorry, excuse me. Just let my paper roll here go, which I need later on for just drying off my brush. I'm going to use a bit of a burnt sienna shade. If I can get some of this out of this, that would be handy. Just to see, it's a bit stuck with paint. There we go. Just have to get out. Isn't it typical? Get stuck now. There we go. Now, a burnt sienna is a kind of a reddish brown, as you can see there. And it's a great colour. It gives a very warm, a nice warmth to pictures. And I'm going to add a little bit of a yellow ochre into this as well, which is a sort of like a French mustard kind of shade. And it's quite a good combination. So I'm just going to get this as a sort of a basic colour for the table. Okay. Now, okay, so here we go. This will be interesting because I actually haven't done a still life in a long time. So yep. And I'm just this time I'm just going to keep most of my lines there and just and I'm dragging them mostly that way. And then if I go around something like this, I drag it back. I try not to have these sort of lines visible around items, because what happens, it makes it look very like you're kind of putting a halo effect around something, and we don't want to do that. So for now, and as you can see, I really haven't washed my brush at all here. I've just sort of dried it, sort of, I like the time I use it. It's quite thick paint on it, and I'm kind of going from different colors really here. I'm using a bit of, I'm allowing different shades to go through it. So let's see what happens. Kind of excited to see how this turns out, because as I say, I haven't done a still life for a long time, and I want to do it, see how much I get in the hour and a half. I hope to get it up to a certain level whereby I'd say, okay, that's great, I'm happy enough with this now, and if there's any little fiddly bits, I could fix them afterwards, and I might do that. But I'll try and work up to see what I can get done. So it's 4, 5, 10 to 6. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of water on it now, because it's just got a little bit too dry. And I think it's just because the yellow ochre paint there is a little stickier than the other paint. Probably it's a better quality paint, actually. It's not as, there's a little bit more pigment in it, but then it kind of gets a bit thicker too. So that's the disadvantages around. So I'm just going to give that a dipping now, just to give it a good kind of a mix up. But again, it's a mix up that I'm still, so because I want little bits of different shades to go through. It gives it already it'll give it a sort of a naturally kind of flavour to it, as it were. I'm literally going through one. That's how rough you can be. Now I'm just going to put a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm just going to bring this around here like that, and then I'm going to drag it out, as I said, so do not have that line going around it. And we go like that. Okay, so we're getting a kind of a shade in, and I'm going to put a little bit of a dark shade in here as well, a little bit of white on it. So I'll mix a bit of white into my brownie, darker brown here, and I'm just going to put a bit of it underneath my vase for now. Okay. Now, not this part here is where the lemon or where the apples is, so obviously we're not going to put that in. Now I'm going to add a color now for the. By the way, I'm using these trays here, the trays from Chicken and God knows what, which is really handy for doing our your painting in our mixing paints. I'm just looking for a color here. Sorry. Oh yeah, a little bit of lemon yellow, which I'm going to just get a rough lemon yellow color for my my lemon. Funnily enough, I'm going to mix that up. I'm going to just wash that brush. Just get a little bit of it to dry it. We're just going to use a bit of kitchen roll or whatever just to give it a dab. It's not quite as thick, and I'm grab a bit of my white with that. So I'm grabbing a bit of white. The reason I put the white too with it as well, it gives it makes it more opaque, stronger. So I'm just going to dab that now. I know it's quite light at the moment, but we'll build that up. I'm just getting a rough color on everything here. A little dab in there as well. Okay, so there we go. Now, for my banana is slightly deeper, so I'm going to add a normal I have a processed yellow here. Cadmium yellow would be perfect, and it's a deeper yellow, as you can see. So, but I'm going to put some more white with that, and so it's kind of slightly creamier, but I'm also going to put a little bit of a tiny touch of our blue, tiny bit of blue on the thing there now. Now see what happens here. I want a hint of a green. This has a bit of a slightly greeny hue to this. That's a bit more, that's a bit too. I'm going to put a bit of the brown to it, a bit of yellow ochre into it as well, just to deepen it down a bit. Yeah, that's it now. So a little bit of a yellow ochre into that, and I'm going to just bring that around like that. So we have yellow, we have white, we have a little tiny bit of blue, and some yellow ochre. I'm just going to leave that like that for now. Okay, now I'm going to come back to my light yellow mix with my white here, and I'm going to put a basic color on the bottom of the apple, and a little bit of my yellow ochre. And the reason is because the under part of the apple, it's a red apple, but I want to kind of there's an under kind of a yellowy kind of mustardy shade as well. So I'm just going to cover that first of all on the apple, like that. Just kind of working it around. Now I know some of my lines are coming through because I was working quite heavy there on that, and that kind of pencil does make it quite so I'm just going to bring a little bit more white into that. I'm not going to work too much on it now because I don't want to go into the whole workings of it, and a little bit of, we'll work back on it, but I will put a bit of red onto it too. A little bit of blue, and the reason I put a little bit of blue into it is I want to give it a little quick flick of green here. Yeah, that's a bit too, see, there, a bit loads of too much, way too much white. Now, a little smaller brush now because I just can't control that with that very small brush here. I have everything ready and then I put it down, I can't find it. Typical. Anyway, here we go. So just one little bit of greeny shade there like that. Just leave it like that for now and work it out. See, I always paint on the side of my hand. You see, this is not what I'm recommending for everybody else to do, but that's what I do. Now, we're going to get a bit of our red. Whoa, that came out too big. Okay, so we're going to get some red here. And I'm going to actually mix it with a bit of our burnt sienna, that reddish brown that we had earlier on, okay? So a little bit of that and that. I said you can dip in any time and come in and out of this painting because I'll be doing this for a while, so don't, work away and do things and come back and see how it goes. And I'm using a fairly dry brush. It's quite important to get a sort of a dry brush technique sometimes rather than actually just using a wet brush often. And the one thing about when you're doing something that's round or whether you're doing something is to think about the shape of the item you're using or you're drawing. So if you're drawing something that's round, don't color it in like that. Make sure you go with the shape. So you think about an apple is, it's all going into that centerpiece. So you work the color around into that like that. So already you're getting that feeling. I'm going to drag that middle bit. You're already getting that sense of what it is. That's an apple, okay? So it's just still very rough. And we're going to come back now and I'm going to put a bit of colour on the daffodils. But these again are very rough. So it literally is very rough because I will be doing more in the background and I don't want to have too much done on them. So at the moment, I'm just already but I'm still, even at this stage, I like to put the idea of where I'm going with the colour. So the fact that the daffodil is working into the centre, but I'm not coming outside my lines because I still want to do more on the background. So it's just more almost it's almost a psychological thing. You just want to fill fill it up. So you're going to get that idea of having a picture too. And then you can work from there. So, okay. So that's literally, so now you see that I have an overall color on it, okay? So I have an overall color on it there like that, you see? So now you see, I now know that there's my picture I'm ready to go with now. So I'm ready to start, go back in on it. Up to now, I've been kind of just literally just filling in all the bits, but I know now where it'll work or where it won't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the background. See, I've already got paint all over me. And I'm going to start by making it a little lighter here. Now, the light is coming from the right, so you'd imagine, well, why wouldn't it be dark on this side? But if you think of it in terms of the fact that there's something like a window here, we're going to have the light shining in here, so it'll be shadowed here and it will be light across this side. So I'm going to work with a lighter brown blue here this side. So I'm going to put the brown and blue like we did at the beginning. I'm just going to get a little bit more blue. Where have I put the blue? There it is. So a little bit more blue here. And I'm going to mix the blue and the brown. And I'm going to add the white to it. So I'm going to see where I go with this. And I want to put a little bit lighter in place. And we're going to be quite, I can add even a little bit of the burnt sienna. Because you can add, look, you can put different colours, all different shades at the back. But I'm just going to bring it and very lightly, fairly dry brush, bringing this across, flicking this in and out. So that there's not that much paint on this brush. And you just I'm flicking it across this side, and I'm going to bring it across this way a bit too. That's a bit, now see, there's gone a bit too bright, so I'm going to just darken that down. A little bit more dark brown blue into that. And you can do different shades. You can do all different shades going through it. It's nice to have the different shades coming through it. I'm going to put, oh, let's look at that now. I want that one really bright. But you know what? Let's go with it. It's nice to do different. You can play around with color here because the background is a background. It's up to you. Another reason why I wanted to have it nice and bright on this side and dark on this side, which would logically be because I said the windows here, there's going to be a shadow here and then it'll shine across this side. It'll also mean that the shadows are on the left, so they'll nicely contrast against the light of the background, and then this side will be darker. So I'm going to just put a little bit more here. Flick this in and out. I say, if you have any questions to ask me along the way, please do, don't forget. Or if I can't see them now, sometimes at the end of the day there was questions, some people were asking and I didn't see them till later on. For some reason they didn't come up, but that's fine. I will get around to them afterwards, don't worry about it. So make sure, again, if you do a line like that, make sure you drag it out so that you don't end up with these lines across on each side of your anything you're drawing. So just kind of keep them, so you can draw a line like that, for example, along there, and then drag it back into that. So I'm doing is I'm allowing some of the background. You might say, why you're going over it all again? But I amn't, because actually the background color is still coming through. You're still seeing this under part. If I just came in with this light color on top of white canvas, it would be totally different. So I'm just allowing different shades to come back into it, and sometimes I just let them go and just let them. You can have a bit of fun doing this. You can do whatever colors. I mean, I'm just doing this dark background because I had a dark background here, but you could do, it's kind of really up to you what background you could put in it. You know, you could put, but you work the same technique, you know, you could work different shades coming through it, but the same idea. So I'm using a fairly dry brush here now. Now, okay, so I'm going to go back with my dark again. My dark brown blue. Oh, that's a bit too, I forgot the paint came off. Where's my brown is. The trouble is I do this all the time. I put down paints and then I can't find them. I should stick them in the one place all the time, but I don't. Anyway, not good when you're trying to do it for people, but anyway, I'll get there. Okay, so a bit of a brown and a blue, and we do it like that. Okay. And I'm going to put in some pure blue here as well, just to give it a nice depth to it. And I can flick it backwards and forwards. See, it's still brown on my brush. I often use the colors on my brush at the same time. I am using acrylics, Vera. Hello, Vera. How are you? Yeah, I am using acrylics. Yeah, indeed I am. But you could do this with oils as well, of course. The difference between oils is you'd actually have, well, it's in one way it's easier. Oils is easier in one sense because you have a lot more time to play around with your color, and acrylics dries very fast. If you make a mistake, in other words, if there's something you don't really like in acrylics, you can still obviously you can still just go back over it because it dries very, as I say, because it dries very fast. However, oils is quite a good bit of fun too. So here's my kind of background shade. So I'm quite happy with that now for now overall. I think that kind of works. And I'm going to, as I say, I work from back to front, as I was explaining earlier on. I work from the back to the front, and I think anyone who's been to any of the classes, what I would say, and I'll show you, Vera, what I'm doing actually, because if anyone has missed this, this is actually what I'm doing. Now, I know you're seeing it from a slightly different angle. Actually, I'll just turn it around for you to see it again, so that you can just have a look at what I'm actually painting here. Now, so you can see here, now I'm not using black, you can see I just use black paper there as a background. I was explaining at the beginning how I was getting the triangle overall shape of the composition, so that how I know where to put it on the page rather than starting with an item and drawing around everything, because then if I get the overall shape, it's easier to place it on the page so that it actually works better. Now, so we're going to come back around here now, and I'll just put this back here. So now we've kind of got our background in. Now, as I said, because I'm doing this also is the background. This is where these are sitting on this. So I'm going to do a bit more of the background here. So there's not an awful lot to do with this, but I will establish sort of edges, as it were, on it. And so I'm using a bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit of the two browns, the burnt sienna and the burnt umber. I'm just going to edge that. I just want to just go in front of it for a minute. Sorry, apologies here. Just want to make sure I'm putting this line somewhere vaguely straight. If I do it from the side, some God knows what I'd be drawing, and I wouldn't be able to see it right. And I'd be telling you one thing and drawing something completely different, which isn't be much help to anyone. So I'm going to add a little bit of white into this as well, and a little bit of yellow ochre. I have to put out more yellow ochre. Where my yellow ochre is somewhere. It's here, isn't it? It is. It's here. Now, so I'm just put a bit of yellow ochre into it. So now we get a bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of our burnt sienna, and I'm just going to drag. I'm just kind of, there's a lot of bissies here that I missed, and I'm just going to give that feeling of a kind of a wood. I'm just kind of, everywhere I go around anything, I'm going to drag it back out a bit. And I'm even allowing myself to come back in with bits of blue into this as well, because the blue, when it mixes with the under brown, gives it a nice dark. Now, that's very blue. You might say, oh God, that's too blue. I don't mind, because what I do then is I just come back with a little bit of the other shades that come through it. It looks like a bit like a grain in the wood. So you can be quite relaxed doing this part. This bit could be a bit of fun, really, because, you know, you're not, it's kind of up to you, really, what way you do this. I mean, I'm using this as a starting point, so I'm not being too, I'm not doing it sort of copying it religiously in terms of the, in terms of exact, this particular table, as it were. It was just sort of a backdrop I have for it. So I want a bit more browny blue, so I'm just gonna try to fill in my gaps here and that. A few bits darker down the front, maybe. And I might add a few more little bits of our, here's our yellow ochres here, Bits of white came through there. That's rather nice. Now, the shadow. There is shadow on these. So I'm going to actually put the shadow on the table now at this stage. Because if you think about it, the shadow, again, as I said, is coming from the right, over this side of the page. So the shadows, therefore, will be on the left of the items. And how I'm going to mix the shadow is I'm going to use a bit of my brown and my blue. When I say the brown, I'm using the burnt umber and a little bit of ultramarine, and I mix them together, and I'm going to drag them in like this. And I go right bit, I can go in on top. And I can still go with the grain of the table a bit. And add even little bits of the blue directly into that. Throw that a little bit under here. I'm going to just get into the grain of the paper here, of the canvas here. And I'm going to do the same over this side. Ooh, went a bit too hard there. Didn't realize I was at near the canvas. And I'm going to go around my glass, and I'm going to do a little bit of the glass. Will be kind of mixed because it's a kind of a shadow, but remember it's glass, so you're not going to see it. It's going to be a strong shadow off that. I just put a little shadow in there because it's going to be shadow there where the lemon is too. And you can already see now you kind of got that feeling of a wood table there with you know, you're establishing it now as a definite wooded section. Now, as I say, I'm aiming to kind of get this done in a certain time scale, so or most of it done. So I'm not dwelling too much. Just going to color in a little bit of these little flicky bits where I've missed flicks, tiny flicks on the canvas. There's a bit of the browny shades. Okay, I think that's about. I'm just going to deliberately go into that and then flick it back out again. Now, and as you note, I did not. One thing that's quite important here. I did not put the shadow going the whole way up here. The reason is the banana only connects really with the bottom of it here, where it sort of the curve sits onto the table. If I put the shadow the whole way up here, it would flatten that banana. It would make it look very flat against the background. So you only just put it right where it's actually touching the table. Now I'm going to start on my my daffodils. So we're going to go back to my other one here. So I want to put out more lemon yellow, like this, and I'm going to get some more white as well. So there's the lemon yellow gone down into the. God, I can never get this right. Let's put it the wrong way. There it is there. You can see it. Like, it's hard for me to see how bright that is. It looks really bright on the screen, so I'm hoping you can see the actual colour. Actually, I'll put excuse the noise of this, by the way. It doesn't sound very good. Anyway, there's kids' class now, they'd be laughing, but anyway. Now, okay. We're going to put a little bit of our white and our yellow together. So we're going to make it really bright. And again, the white also makes it opaque. It makes it much more that if you put yellow, can be very translucent color, often hard to see through it. So I'm going to put a little bit of a lighter shade on the back. And I'm just looking to see. And I'm doing my back petals first. And a petals, if you know, I'm just doing these are these multi, what would you call it? Inner, these daffodils with all the little petals inside. They're the old sort of, I suppose, the wild ones more. They're not the manufactured one, the grown ones. So there's lots of little inner bits on it. So I'm going to do the outer ones, and they're a little bit wobbly. These ones too. They look like they've been blown around the garden, which is probably true. They were very, very windy today, anyway. So I'll just put a little one down to the bottom like that. So there we're starting to establish the shape, and then this side here we're going to come out with a little bit. We'll put one up here like this, another one like that, another one. This is kind of another one coming in on top of the main bit, and another one coming like. I'm still using quite a wide brush. I'll come down into a narrower brush later, and I'm going to put another one there. Now, okay, so these are kind of, as I say, these are very wobbly. They're very wobbly daffodils. They're not your nice designer ones that you get in the shop. They're ones straight out of the garden. So I'm going to come in with a smaller brush. Maybe not quite that small initially. I'll go for the middle one if I can just find the right brush here, which I had earlier on. Here we go. Make this a bit better. Here, this one's good. Now, okay, so I'm going to go in for a stronger yellow now. So I'm going to go back to my process yellow, or cadmium yellow is perfect. And I say cadmium yellow, you can get different shades of cadmium yellow. You can get yellow, depends on the make. If you go for the Daler cadmium yellow, it's quite something. It's not unlike the process yellow, actually. If you go for the Winsor & Newton one, you'd have to go for the pale one to get that, because if you go for straight cadmium yellow, it's actually a very dark, more orangey yellow. So I'm just literally just building this up now. Initially, I'm just putting more stronger color on it to start with. There's not much. And I'm going to add a little bit of white into that. Again, the reason I'm putting a bit of white into it is to make it more opaque, so that you will see it on top of my the background color. And as I say, these daffodils, so they're multi-innered ones, if that makes sense. Lots of little. Now I'm going to add in my stem. So I'm actually going to just mix a bit of I'm not going to bother with the green. I'm just going to add get a bit of my blue, if you can pick it up here somewhere. There we go. And I'm going to mix that with a bit of yellow, a bit more yellow, and maybe a bit of white. And again, the reason I put a bit of white into it, again, it'll make it opaque, it'll make it stand out against the background. So I'm just going to mark in where I'm going to have our stems. The stem is going to come up here, it's going to come across. And already these are all helping to kind of establish what we're doing. Okay, so, and we're going to just draw this, just mark in roughly where this is. This is only rough, this is actually ready to, I can change this around afterwards. So we're going to come in, I'm going to do a little bit more on my actual glass. Now, for the glass, I'm going to use a smaller brush. And I'm going to go back to my brown blue initially. Okay. So I'm going to get going to mix a separate. I have my brown and my blue, and I'm going to add white. And I'm just going to establish this section here of the rim of it. I might make it a little bit wider here too. This is where I can play around with the actual shape of it now at this stage. I'm just really just establishing it a bit more, like this. This is where I'm actually going with this shape. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of blue and white. So make a pale blue. I'm going to start. Let's get it. Take out on too much on the glass on it. Bring it around. I'm going to just get the edge of my glass. And I'm just bringing some of this. See, I'm flicking it down. Very dry brush effect here, actually. I'm flicking it down till we have the water. The water line is about here. Just want to go in front of this for a second. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm not doing this to the side, because it's a very dangerous thing, as I said before. When you're actually trying to do something and you're working from the side, you think you have it straight, and then you go in front of it and you think, oh my God, that's, well, I was going to say a certain word, but it's not. But it is, it would be lopsided is the word I'm looking for. Very lopsided. Basically, I'm just going to flick back there. See, now there's where I want to bring that, just going to bring in the table a little more there on that side. Okay, so I just want to make sure I know where I'm going with that my jar is actually with my water, that I want to make sure that it's kind of straight. Otherwise, as I said, it could be as wobbly as anything, and I wouldn't see it. And I'm going to put a little bit, now too much white there, just a little bit of white here. I have a heater on here, and I'll just move to the side because it's starting to melt. Now, this is the rim of the water. There's a water halfway down the jar, so I'm just going to bring a little rim of the water here. And inside the water actually looks darker for where I'm seeing it. So again, we talked about that ellipse that we had a while ago. That's a bit too dark. Let's just go back with a bit of the light. I'm not bringing it quite to the edge, just very short of the edge. I'm just going to bring some of the shadows. There's kind of shadowy feelings through the glass, so you can use a bit again. It's all your brown, blue, and your white. That's the colors I'm using the whole time. In other words, your ultramarine, your burnt umber. And again, it's a very dry brush. There's just enough paint on this to make marks, is all there is. And I'm putting a little more shadow down in here. In the back, this is the back section of the ellipse. And we can actually go through where the water is, because remember the water is inside. So we can put shadows on the outside that actually go right through that area. I'm going to put a little more white in that, take it off. I said I don't necessarily recommend you painting on your hand. And the reason I actually do, which is probably not really a good idea, but it's because I can actually feel the paint on it. So I'll show you this now up closer in a minute when I have it done. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the brown blue just through the bottom section here as well, where I have it coming through the table. And I'm going to get more white now, because I want to establish some of the shine on it. Really, glass is not that. It looks always very hard to do, but it's not that hard, really. It really is. Sorry, I'm painting up my arm here, so just ignore me on that bit. I'm not telling you to do that now. You can use, but I think it's because I can feel the consistency of the paint, actually. That's why. I'm going to bring the white. Now, I'm just going to show you a little bit of this more up close, and I'm not finished it yet, but you can have a look. Do you see how I'm bringing in the shadow area? The shadow's coming in front of the water, and I'm establishing a little shadow down the middle here. I'm starting to highlight the light areas, so I'm going to really highlight these areas now in a second with really white areas to bring it out. As I say, you can come back in a while. You can go off, make a cup of tea, come back. I'll still be here nattering away to myself. So I'm going to, there's the rim, and another little bit of the rim here. And I'm going to just drag a little bit of the light coming through here. So I'm starting to drag in where I see little white bits, because it really is quite white in places where the light just catches it. And sometimes if you find it's too white, it's white, but it's kind of almost a grey white. Take a bit of white, just take it off the brush like that, and then just almost drag it down ever so gently. I'm going to drag a little bit of white here as well. A little bit of reflected light there on the side of the just going to drag that a bit in. Take that off. So when I drag it in, I use a very dry brush. And one thing is to say, always hold your brush far back. Don't hold it like a pencil. If you hold it like a pencil, you'll find you're going to dig in. It's going to be much more constraining. You might think you have less control, but in actual fact, you have far more control when you hold the brush far back. Hello, Fiona. How are you? I'm going to just a few little bits here. Flickers like that. So just little flickers up. So I'm just going to make that water a little bit more definite. The water line that's kind of halfway down the jar in here, or the vase, as it were. And actually, there's quite a dark line at the back of it. Now I'm going to add a bit more of my green, I'll wash my hand, dry my brush a little bit of my stem coming down here a little more. And the stem will come a little bit to the side in this, because remember, it's through water, so it's always a little bit distorted. Now I'm going to add a bit of shadow going up the side of the stem now. So for that, I'm going to add a bit more of I'm going to get a bit of the blue. And I usually use the blue-brown. The blue-brown I was saying, the blue ultramarine and the burnt umber. And it's a great shadow color. So I'm just going to shadow it along a little bit down here. And shadow it a little underneath the flower and along like that. And we can do the same inside the jar as well. Like that, just flickers off. Don't go too detailed. Now the top of the bulbous part here, we have a kind of it's a sort of a greeny yellowish color, so, and a bit of yellow ochre. So we get our mustard yellow ochre color here. I might just put out a little bit more. Or if I put it, I keep losing the yellow ochre for some reason. It is here. Okay. So I'm just going to. So, hi Fiona. Remember, you can actually look back at this too. So so if your mom would like to see it, don't forget she can just tune into the Facebook page at any time and see it. And if you have any questions afterwards, please ask me, because I'm only too happy to answer. Okay, what was I doing? I can't remember. I was doing, oh yes, the stem. Sorry, the top here. Sorry, I just had a blank moment there. So I'm adding a little bit of my yellowy greeny shade, and I'm just putting a little bit on the top of the back. This, and I'm just going to let it go in on top of the flower for a second, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of our burnt sienna, which is our reddish brown here, in here as well. Just little flickers of that in there. Now I'm going to start working on the actual the daffodil itself. I might come back and highlight those whites again in a while, because they look a little bit grey, but I'll leave it till later on. So you can work to a certain level and then you can come back again. That's the great thing about it. Look at the state of my hand. Look at that. Oh, artist at work. I don't know. I am a disaster. I don't have anything that hasn't got paint on nearly the stage. Okay, so I'm using an orange. Now I could make an orange with a yellow and a red, but I'm going to just bring it. It's a deep orange. And I'm going to mix it with a bit of my nice deep processed yellow, or cadmium yellow would be perfect. So you can see it there. It's becoming a, which way am I going? This way. And I'm going to start just doing flickers across in here. I'm going to make this quite And I'm going to add little bits of blue, believe it or not, little bits of blue, because I want kind of a dark, a slightly shadowed shade on these. And a little bit of my burnt sienna, which is my reddish brown, the two of these together. I'm going to start bringing in a little, have a look at this now. It's just shadowed shades. I might put more blue in that now. It's a bit too brown. So I'm just going to mix that with my yellow. So I'm just going to bring a slightly shadowed shade across this one here. We can highlight them afterwards, you see. So I just want to say you can see them as well. Sorry, I'm having my hand over it probably. So I'm just trying to build up. I say these daffodils are the other type. They're not the ones you buy in the supermarkets. The florists, they're much the old-fashioned ones, which are much more millions of different little shadow little petals inside the main outer petals. So they've got lots of little things going on. It's not just the standard one. They're quite pretty though. Very pretty. Lovely to see them growing. It's like nature just carries on regardless. It doesn't care whether there's a coronavirus or what there is going on. It just continues as normal. It's just so weird. It's like, you know, you're looking at the season coming and then you're thinking it's just another world we're in at the moment. But it's funny because the only positive thing I can think of is the fact that we are beginning to appreciate things that sometimes are missing out of the world at the moment, which is just time to stop. And that's what we have no chance. We have no choice but to stop. For example, and as I said, I made a post about it the other day on Facebook, how now that we're stopped doing things, what do we turn to? We turn a lot of time to the arts. We turn to read. We turn to look at even films. We turn to do painting. We turn to listen to music, which are all parts of the arts. And it's a part that's often overlooked really in life is the arts, unfortunately. And we realize now how good it is for the soul, basically. And of course, things, even exercise, getting out, even if it is, suddenly we realize how much we need exercise when we can't do it. We think, oh, everybody suddenly wants to do exercise. And it's just so important as well. Now I'm just going to jiggle this up. Just bringing these out through this now side. So I'm getting in front of it here. Just add little bits of white to it. And I'm going to come back in with my stronger colour now. If I can find my yellow. There we go. Putting out more yellow again. Where is my yellow gone? This processed yellow I'm using here. And there we go. Throw it on the ground. That's nice. Big lump of red now on the ground I have to clean up later on. Oh well. Could be worse. Okay. So I'm going to just tip these along now. I'm quite strong in my yellow here. Add a little bit of yellow and orange into that. sort of a deeper kind of a yellow in the middle of this. Now I'm going to leave them for a minute and come back to them in a few minutes. Just let them dry back a little bit. And what I'm going to do in the meantime, because I'm working everything up bit by bit by bit. So I'm going to come back in and do my lemon. So I'm going to come back with the mix. I'm going to mix the two yellows together, the light yellow, the lemon yellow, and the, and actually I might use a different brush. I'm going to use a bristle brush this time. And I'm just going to dot it. I'm going to use this because the bristles are actually quite good, because what they'll do is they give it a texture. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of my burnt sienna colour as well. And I'm going to just dab it through it like that. And a little bits of my green as well. And I'm going to come back in with the yellow now in a second. I don't mind if I hit my apple for now, because that's quite sort of irrelevant at the minute. And I'll just smudge it a little bit at the edges. Come back in my yellows. My lemon yellow. Now I'm just going to leave that again for a minute as well. And I'm going to work down to my, I like to try and work it up in all different sections, and then gradually work through it, so that we kind of work, work bit by bit by bit, and then we work back into it again. So I'm going to mix a bit of my yellow ochre with my yellow. I'm going to work a little bit on our banana a little bit now. I'm actually going to add more of the shadow in later on, so rather than at the moment. But there is a bit more yellow into that. A bit more yellow here. So I'm establishing it kind of a bit more. I add a bit of white into it too, because I'm just going to give it a bit of blue gun on there. Sorry about it. Now I'm just going to get that. Now, and I'm just going to leave that there for a minute now as well. Just leave that. I'm going to work back a little bit more on my apple. So I've done a bit on the apple already, so I'm going to keep bringing that kind of a reddish shade into it. And I'm going to take a bit of that off it. And actually I'm going to put a bit of yellow, or not yellow ochre, a little bit of our burnt sienna, which is the reddish brown colour. Burnt sienna and the red together. And I'm going to just bring it in here. Establish your shape. See, I'm going to drag it this way first, but I'm not going to keep it like that, because I'm now going to drag it in towards the center. I'm going to drag this on top of my apple a little bit. Just make sure I'm getting the right shape again, because I'm not standing in front of it, and it's not good to do it. And I'll come back with a bit of our sort of greeny yellow. We made a green earlier on with our blue and our yellow, and I'm just going to put a bit more, I'm just going to drag a bit of that more coming back across. Just look at the time now. Where is it? Half. Okay, so I'm going to try and get this done as up to a certain stage by the next 15 minutes, in which case I would work on the rest of it afterwards. So what I will do for now is I will get this as much as I can done, or 20 minutes, sorry, 20 minutes. Now, I'm going to work back again a little bit on the jar, just going to bring it out a bit more. So use this small, the white brush, very small brush, a little pointed brush, or not pointed brush, this is a flat brush actually. And I'm going to start highlighting my jar again. So I'm going to bring in a bit more of the white into it. Let's get this nice, get the nice bit of it. There's a nice, really white line going down there. And there's a lot of it. So don't be afraid to put a bit of yellow in there. Don't want the yellow on it. I know, you're probably laughing at me doing this all over my wrist. And don't mind I cut through my stem. That is absolutely fine. Because I'm going to come back and fix that up. It's a bit high out there, a bit too far. Just bring that down a bit. I can come back into the background there a little bit if I need to. See how it looks in a minute. Yeah, I'm just going to come back a little bit with the background there because I actually went out a bit too far. So that's the best thing about this. You can do that. See, that's where you can always make a mistake. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to drag a few little cross ones as well. So we can actually add a few little cross lightish ones to give it that kind of, again, fairly dry brush. And then dragging it down again. So just get that, gives it that sort of glassy feel to it. I could use a dry brush. A lot of the time you use a dry brush more than you use a wet brush actually. So we'll do that and we'll bring. Now, so I'm just going to get that edge a bit, darken it a bit here. I'm going to do brown. Now drag it back into it a bit. So you can see how I'm getting the sort of, you see the way it gets that sort of glassy effect. Now I'm just going to back up here and I'm going to just do a little bit more of these lads up here. Now I'm going to use a bit of my white with my lemon yellow initially. And I'm going to drag, let's have a look at this. Now, my blue here, I'm going to mix a bit of blue and a bit of my dark brown together. So if you have any questions or anything, just give me a call. Or it's a bit too dark, so I'm just going to take that off and I'm just going to get the very depth. This is just on the very inside. I'm going to go quite dark in places. Because sometimes when you go dark and then you take it off and you smudge it out, just so gently smudge, very gently. This almost, as I always quote my mother, and she used to always say, whisper it along. And I used to always wonder when I was younger, what does she mean by that? And it's only when I got older and was painting more, I realized exactly what it means. It's like you just whisper it along, you just get that light, like it's just barely touching the paint along it. And that's what you do, just a tiny little whisper of paint. So, I say in oils, it actually more, you can use the oils, when you're using the oils, it actually works nearly better sometimes because you can actually smudge it in better than you can with the acrylics. But I enjoy doing the acrylics as well, and it's very handy because it dries so fast. So that if you're not really happy with it, you just couldn't go over it afterwards. I'll put a little highlight on the leaf, the petal there, because I think it works quite well. A little bit of a You can actually add a little, nice little white little bit like that down the edge of a petal. A white little bit like that. Just gives it another lift. A little white like that. Twisting the brush in your hand. After you twist the brush in your hand, it get, you know, it gets the amount of most paint out of it, just like a flick like that. And then I'm going to drag that back into it, and I'm going to drag that back in like that. And there, I'm going to get rid of that harsh line there that we have here. So I'm going to go back with my brown blue. So take it off and just barely flick it back out into it. So we get the softness of it. Now I'm going to come in with my process yellows. Oh, here it is here. And I'm going to add a little bit of the orange shade I had here to it, just a tiny bit, just not too much. And I'm going to just deepen a few of these little bits here. You can use your paints nice and thick too, is quite nice with that really painterly effect. I'm going to smudge some of the dark areas in here too. I'm actually going to use a little bit of my burnt sienna into this here to warm it up a little bit, the shadow colour. So burnt sienna, a little bit of the ultramarine. And don't have too much on the brush, just a very little bit on the brush. And just gives it a little, as I say, it's these type of daffodils are not they're not the ones that we buy in the shops. They're the ones with the sort of lots of little petals inside. We'll come back with a nice little bit of just the yellow on its own. I'm going to tip along some of these edges here. Just tip them along like this. Just give it a nice little flicker. Now, so now I'm going to work back on this one here now, and I'm going to add a little bit more of the light on these ones here. So I want to get the white with my lemon yellow. And I'm going to add a little touch of white to the edge there like that. Just with the light's picking it up, and flick that back into it. I'm going to put a little bit of a very light edge along here. Because remember, the light is coming from the right hand side. So so when you do it, so if you think about what's going to light up, it's going to be the tips of the flower, the tip of the edges of the petals. I'm just going to hit a little bit of light like that. I'm going to put a bit of the white, the yellow. This is the lemon mixed with my white. Make that back in, and don't worry, I'm going to come back out with a bit of the shadow color onto that too. I'm going to add a bit now for the shadow. I'm going to use I might use a little brush, a smaller brush actually here at this point. Just want to get a smaller brush. I'm just going to get a bit of my brown blue. And I'm going to shadow in here a little bit, and just shadow a little bit on where it joins the stem. More blue. So you can come back anytime and have a look at this. You know, come in and out of it as you dip in and out, or you can, if there's anything you want to say, ask me. I might put a bit more blue out. You know, do it as it's a great way of doing, you know, passing time when you're stuck at home. And rather than turn on the news every 5 minutes to see what the situation is, because, you know, it's a tough time. It really is a tough time all around for everybody, and especially with people with small children as well. Tomorrow I hope to do a live stream in the morning, or at least, sorry, noon, I should say, for the kids. So, and I've been asked to do an Easter bunny. So that is on the cards for tomorrow. So I'll get that done, and I'll have to show you what I will do later on. So, if you'd like to, any of your little children, or know of any little children, to tune in tomorrow for, or not little children, just, you know, there's bigger children, there's all ages of children. Even adults can join in. Some mothers are joining in with their kids, which is great. And So I'm dragging a little bit of the shadow out into this just to give it a little depth, and I will just to do a little more depth here as well, which is basically my brown and blue. Sometimes I use the burnt sienna, sometimes the burnt umber. The burnt sienna gives it a little extra warmth to the picture. So, okay, so I'm going to just, as I say, I'm going to get this picture just to a certain level. You could, and as I say, this are these multi-inner daffodils with all different layers on it. Oh, a bit of shadow in here. So certainly, yeah, the children, as I say, yeah, I have a class tomorrow at 12 o'clock, and we're doing the Easter Bunny. So, and I'm open for suggestions. If you have anyone out there who's children who would like me to do different, please let me know. I must put a call out again because I do run out of ideas. And if anyone knows it, would like to have a suggestion, what I do is I put the names in the hat, as it were, or not the names, the suggestions. And at the end of the class, I choose, I pick out one, and that's the subject for the next class. So it's all your suggestions, or all the children's suggestions, that I'm going to be doing. Now I'm going to add a little bit of the blue, the white, yeah. So I know the children are great. There's some beautiful work that they've shown me online that they've been doing, which is fantastic. I mean, really brilliant. In fact, it's beautiful. I would say that I prefer their ones than the ones I've done. So I said definitely there's some real talent out there, and it's a great way of occupying kids. And you can use whatever kind of colors. You know, if you have, I'm going to be using poster paints for the children. The internet went a bit slow. I'm going to use, but you can use whatever kind of paints you want. They could use acrylics, just make sure that they're wearing something. It's not going to be messed up. Too easy. Now, so I'm just going to put lots of little flickers through here to get that impression of the inside of there's so many different layers in this, and I'm not going into too much detail. I want to give it more like a little impression of it, really. Simple reason that we're kind of stuck on the time. And anyhow, I'm not really doing it. I want to give, way I look at it is when I do painting is, unless, it depends. It depends the type of painting you have to do. Sometimes you're doing a real study. If you're doing a real study, you'll go into the much more detail. If you want to do a kind of more impressionist, well, then you just kind of get the impression of what you're doing. You get what is important. What is important is to capture. So what is it you want to get in the picture? I think this is especially relevant though when you're doing something like landscapes, and that is the serenity of the landscape. Is it the scenery? Is it the light and shade? Is it the composition? Quite a lot of light and shade in this one, for example. And I think that would be a relevant part of it. But it really does vary a lot from picture to picture. And what I'd like to do is just capture something about the picture. Now, I'm just looking at the time now. Time is okay. So what we're going to do is I'll finish up here on these, and then we can work back on it afterwards if necessary. Sometimes you have to let little bits dry too before you write. One great thing to say about this is it dries very fast, so you don't have to wait too long for it to dry. But sometimes you have to just let it dry that little bit more, and then you can just come back to it. But now I'm going to use a trick on this. Actually, first of all, I want this area here. What I'm going to do is get my brown blue. So we have our dark brown here somewhere, and my blue here. As you notice, my fancy palette here is mixing trays from, or the trays from chicken or whatever it was in it, or vegetables. And I'm going to put the dark end on this here, and a dark end on the top of it here, like that. But there's little bits of light coming through, so I'm going to add bits of white mixed in with my yellow ochre shade, which is the shade that's a bit like a burnt, no, a French umber, or French umber, says French mustard. So, what color have I got there? Ah, okay. I want to get a few of the little dark bits on the banana. So I'm going to get a few little bits of brown. Where's my brown? There it is. On this sort of smudgy bits. Again, using a fairly dry brush. white there, just a little lemony white here. I got a bit of white along the edge there, that. A little bit of white with my on the edge of the banana. Or almost white, a bit of lemony white. I'm just going to drag that. I say we often use a dry brush more often. Oh, stuck. No, there we go. It's back again. I don't know whether it was stuck for you, but it certainly was stuck here. The internet does its own thing at times. Now I'm going to put a bit of more brown coming down on the crease of that there. Now I'm going to put a bit of dark in here, like that. And a bit more dark, I put the brown blue, my brown French brown blue. And I'm going to put a bit of shadow in here. And I'm just going to initially do it like a bit more blue in that, actually. Initially just do it like that. And then I'm going to dry that off and just pull that out like in a circle around the side. I'll use a slightly flatter brush for this. That's a bit too pointed, and sometimes if it's too pointy a brush, it'll just turn into a little line. Flat brush is better. Now I'm going to use a shadow shade on part of this. So I'm actually going to use a mix of a blue-brown and I'm going to use it very watery. I often use this as a trick sort of shadow shade. So I'm actually almost like a watercolor. So instead of using the thick paint, I'm going to get my brown. I can find my brown again. I might use a little bit. Yeah, here it is. So it's very, very watery. Very watery shade. Almost like dirty water. And I'm going to, I used this the other day in a picture as well. I'm going to drag it. When I say drag it, I'm going to actually, I'm just going to literally lay it on it. I'm almost not, I'm not painting it on. I'm being really careful to literally just lay it on top of the page. Lay it on top of the picture. Like that. And I'm going to do the same here in this section, but I'm going to do it a bit lighter. Because there's not as much shadow on this section here. But I'm actually going to put a tiny little rim of a tiny little light piece just underneath. And the reason is it's like reflected light. And I can see it as I look at the picture of, and as I look at the, and this is just this very fine line along here like that. And you can just melt it at the side of it. So just give that a little bit more of a straightening there. A little bit of a bumpy banana. And I'm going to put a bit of this on round on this bit here. A little bit whiter line almost just on that edge. Put a bit of my burnt sienna in here. Little bits of burnt. Oh my God, what did I do there? And there you go. See, like a big lump like that. So just go back over that. It's a bit of, always good to make mistakes though, so just flick that back in. Get a little bit more on the brush, actually a bit more of my yellow ochre in there. The yellow ochre is the mustardy shade. Just to dull it down a bit. Maybe yellow as well as that. So you get that shadowed shade there. Now I want to put a bit of shadow as well on the apple or the banana or the lemon even. So I'm going to do exactly the same here with this. And I'm going to drag it along in a bit more blue into that. So it's like, and I'm trying to work as it's like a sort of a quick study of a picture of a I can actually dipple that a bit more, so I can. Now I'm going to put a bit more of the yellow on that. Where's my yellow one? Here it is. A bit more yellow. So say you can work away yourselves, or you can just join in wherever you want. You can come back and look at it. I say I'm just working to get this as like, as I say, a study. This is the kind of one where I'd probably come back if I was and work back on it after a while and do a bit more. But I want to try and get a rough idea so you can kind of have an idea where you go within a time scale, as it were. So that we can get an idea. I'm going to put a little bit of bird's eye in there as well. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to put a little bit of the bright yellow on this as well, on this edge a little bit, just a tiny bit of a one on that edge there. I'm going to drag it back, bring it back into the picture, or into the lemon, I mean. And we could stipple it a little bit. We can use a little stippling technique on this. Just stipple along, stipple, stipple, stipple. Now, and we're just going to put a little bit. Now the banana, I'm just going to put a darker edge on that there, that banana. So I'm going to put a bit of my brown blue, and I'm actually going to darken it just like that, like that. Now that might be too dark. Obviously, it's meant to be too dark. And then what I do is I'm just going to smudge that back down into it. I will add a little bit of our yellow and our yellow ochre into that. Now I'm going to do the same with my apple here. I'm going to use my blue-brown here color as well, and I'm going to darken along in this here, this part here at the bottom. So I'm going to get quite watery shade. So we still see our red coming through. Yeah, it should come darker again. I'm making this very watery, but it just kind of is like a shadow. So you still see our red color. I'm going to put a little more in there. And I want to put a nice little white. Not too much. I'm going to put a little line white here. So I can just smudge that back a bit, each side with a dry brush. I say often it's about putting on less paint than more paint. And a little bit here. And I'm just going to put a bit more light on this side because it's more of a yellowy on this side, actually, the banana, or the banana side, the apple. And also it'll help to make it stand out against the thing. So I'm going to bring it like that in a line, and then I'm going to smudge that back into the apple. Also helps to make it look, it helps to bring it away from the table too. I'm going to make it a little more yellow in that, and it's a bit too whitish. Like that. So even if I put a line like that, look, take that off and then smudge that back into that. And going all the way, and the other thing is, think of you're going into the center of the apple all the time, because that's the center. So you're working back into that center the whole time. That's because and it's going round into that bit. That's kind of important. You're going round. Brush strokes, the direction of brush strokes is nearly more important than the color, to be honest. And you know, I did as an exercise one day in a class. We actually did everything in the wrong color in a picture, and you could still see the trees were the trees, the grass was the grass, the sky was the sky, purely on the basis of the brush strokes and the shapes. It's actually nearly more important. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the yellow, a little bit like that, and we might put a little bit of the deeper yellow in, just to give a little flick of a shadow here, just a little flick shadow, and just want to come back up and give these a little more of a lighter bit along some of these. So mix a little bit of the white in with there. I just want to flick across here. Sometimes you can just see it forming where to go. Oops, a bit more. Where am I going? This the one. Didn't pick up the wrong color. I nearly did. Look, I put blue in it. There we go. Don't do that. Sometimes that's the I have to get a right proper tray. That's the one. Now I'm just going to take that off, and I'm going to smudge a few of these bits back into it. You work backwards and forwards, you see, from things. You know, you work one way then, and then you work the other way, and then you work back one way. And that's the great thing about paint. You can sort of keep going backwards and forwards to it the whole time. You're not really trapped in one area. You know, don't ever think, oh, I'll finish that bit now. Often when you do another bit, you go back and look and say, oh God, no, I have to do more on that one, or I have to do, or sometimes the opposite. Sometimes you think, I'll come back to that. And then when you get another bit done, you look and say, oh, actually, no, I don't. That's actually bang on now. Because sometimes a colour, if you do another bit, it offsets another part of the picture. It's amazing how colours work together. And as I say, one bit can make a big difference to another bit later on. That's why I say don't work too much of one part at any one time, because when you do the other bit, it can throw you completely then when you come back to it. I think I said this story before, maybe I didn't. The guy in one of my classes, and this man did a lovely picture of a ruin, and in the background he had the sky, and the sky was all different cloud colours, and or coloured clouds, like it was sunset kind of, it was purpley colours, and there was lots of different coloured sky or clouds in the sky, and the rest of the canvas was totally blank, white. And he had roughed in the ruin there. He was going to draw with the hill in the background, and that was fine. And he asked me, he said, what am I going to do about these clouds? Will I change them, or will I leave them? And they just look like bum, 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 dum, 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 kind of that kind of look around the sky. And I was like, I don't know. I said, to be honest, I said, you know what? Paint in a rough colour on the rest of the landscape. Paint in your rough greens. Don't go in detail. Rough colour for the ruin, and then we'll have a look at it. So we did. And the minute he did that, you know, we both looked and we said, you know what? Don't change those clouds. They're absolutely perfect as they are. And purely because he had actually decided to colour in the whole canvas. If he had just left it and had just the sky, he would have kept playing around with the sky and playing around the sky, and you could have ended up, not saying making a mess of it, but you just kind of, you'd be forever trying to get it right. Whereas the minute he did the rest of the greenery in, and it was only done roughly, I'm going to add another little petal here. I just feel I needed. Oh, let's see. Just need another petal. I think it does. Just want to give it a little bit of one there. And I'm going to put a shadow on that now. So I'm putting a little shadow on that little lad. So we're going back to our old reliable shady colour. Here. A bit more darker than that. Or a bit darker, I should say, not a bit more darker. Now, how am I for time? Okay, well, it's nearly 6 o'clock, so I'm going to leave it at that for now. And, just one little thing. There's other bits I could do, but we'll get there. It's just like a study in it, and I went through my thing earlier on, my stem when I was doing the glass. So I'm just going to put a bit more. I'll post a picture of this up at the stage it's at anyway, so you can see what we did. I know it mightn't be that clear on this, so if you want to look at it afterwards on the page, you can have a look at it and you can see the study. Oh yeah, I'm going to lighten it a little bit longer, a little more yellow into it. Give it a nice little cheery bit there, little flickers through there. Now, so that's it for now, and I hope that's straight, isn't it? It is. See, the trouble is working sideways on a picture. God knows, I could end up doing a picture and look at it afterwards and say, well, that was great. It's all sideways because I wasn't looking at it straight. But anyway, I think it is. Okay, I did check it now and again. So basically, so that's the idea. It's like a quick study, an hour and a half. So you could work on that for as long as you want, really. Keep going back at it. I would look at that now and I'd say after an hour, I'd say, okay, I might change this and do this and do this. But it's more, as I say, I've painted most of my hand now at this stage, as well as the painting. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was of a little help and a few little tips. As I say, you could work away on this and perfect it in little areas, but I really want to do it as a study to see where we can see where's a good starting point, so because it wouldn't actually take that much longer to actually finish the whole thing out. So I hope that was a help. And as I say, maybe next, I'm hoping to do another one on Friday. Somebody's asked me to do a picture of a cat, if Grania is still there. So I'm going to give that a go on Friday. So, well, listen, thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any questions, please ask me, because I'm more than willing to help if I can. And I'm going to put this picture up as it is for now, and I say with the idea that you could work a little more on it, because that saves just done in the hour and a half. So enjoy and get your paints out and keep going. And remember, you can never really go wrong, because you can always just go over it. You can always change it. It's just relaxing. Don't get caught up in it. Don't panic. Just enjoy it, because it's really good for your mental health, and especially this time when we're all stuck indoors. So listen, stay safe, everybody, and hopefully I'll see you again on Friday. And thank you so much for joining me. I can turn it off now. Well, that's great now. I don't know if this is going off, because it's not going off. It's got stuck. I wonder if I just, oh, there we go. Now, what's it doing? Oh dear, it's still going on, is it?